clients of the house are a young couple with a small kid that used to live very small in the center of Amsterdam and then decided to buy this plot to build their own dream house. And since they had a kid, they wanted a house with a lot of outdoor space, but the plot was so small that they couldn't provide a garden around the house. And we created the garden on top of the house. So the roof terrace and the roof of the building is a garden where they have chicken.
Really?
Yeah, and wine vineyards and a terrace. And so started the idea of a greenhouse, kind of a cube building that overgrows with plants and that has different terraces to be outside. So the question was, can you design a very sustainable house for a very low budget in a place where the sun is a challenge to bring into the house and there is no outdoor space? And then interesting is that at the same time, this was the Netherlands in 2005, where we had the cultural context very differently than we have now. People came from the 1990s, which was a cultural era of freedom and an economic era of boom, and entered the 20th century with a lot of fear for political change. There was the tendency to believe that that the old political elite had designed the country in their fashion and that the people didn't have any influence on it. And in this context, my clients also wanted to have a house that felt something very protectionate and very protective and captive and defensive towards this kind of angry outside world where certain people were killed, like Theo van Gogh, Pim Fortuyn was killed. And suddenly the architecture of hope that was the 1990s, the glass modern architecture of the 1990s was kind of not wanted anymore and demanded my clients something more traditional in the sense of traditional materials, brick, an architecture that would have some kind of protection experience, a feeling that it would be safe, and something monumental and permanent. So these were the values that we represented in the house and that you can really clearly see as the choice for brick is not only because it, for me, links to the identity of Amsterdam very much, but also because of the necessity to create a building that says, look, we are here, we are very robust, it's a safe house in a very dynamic time in which a modernist house would not have been appropriate because it would express another value system than that was current at the time. Actually, we worked from the beginning on materials because I think that's the way I imagine space is always through a sense of material. And we started to be very influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright's houses in the 20s made in Indian Inca style. You know these houses that made from concrete hollow blocks like this size with ornamentation inside in Los Angeles, and those houses overgrew now completely by plants, and I was really fascinated by this idea that nature and architecture could kind of work together that well. However, we tried first to make the house from this concrete garden elements, the ones that have this kind of circle in the middle, an ornamental approach, and make the facade of this. However, that was not strong enough. And then we looked into creating an ornamentation from brick. And that's
strong. It wasn't strong enough in a static sense, or
in a static sense. It was just you would need a whole steel structure behind it to keep them up, and it was also too radical for them. and it was not introverted enough. And if you look at the project now, it has kind of a introverted quality, although it is very expressive at the same time. So the material itself became brick because we could make the same ornamentation, the same depth, and the same plasticism in the facade. But then with a much more conventional material, which would create much more freedom and possibilities. Actually, we had asked Röben for some samples, and we were trying in the office all kind of patterns with bricks. And it was, I think, the client that by accident rotated one brick when we were talking with them about it. And that we said, well, that's not a mistake, that should be actually how we make it. It looks fantastic if we would stick it out. And then also because the plants would be able to grow against the facade easily. And that so created a double effect, a win-win situation. We created an expressive pattern, something that gives the house an identity, but at the same time also a layer for nature to grow on. Of course, not all the bricks are able to be used in that way. What if bricks become wet and it freezes, then they can break. So it was very important to find a brick that was so hard, so the word would be, let's say, hardly baked or porous. What could be porous? That no water would be absorbed. And the second thing was that we had to find this glue, cement. We used doorstrike mortar, Dunbed mortar, which is a combination of cement and glue, which allowed us to make this project strong enough to hold the bricks. And in order to keep the bricks from sliding, we had to ask Röben to make a small incision that allowed the brick layer to cut it off exactly on 1/5 of the length, so it would not be sticking out too much. Then the weight was...
So it was just a mark, or was it
a mark,
really
but that allows you to cut it. It breaks the brick on a straight line when you make this mark. Otherwise, every brick is differently broken.
So they were specially produced for this project.
But that's I think it's a standard surface Röben delivers in special brick projects. And you know, then the weight was exactly right for not tumbling. And then the second challenge was that it wouldn't slide, because if the cement is wet, the brick starts to slide a little bit like this and then slides off. So we added some sand in the cement, and always placed the next brick immediately without cement on top of it to hold it on its place, and then let it dry for a day. So you could only do 3 rows a day, basically. However, that didn't stop the construction layers from doing the project, because we could balance it very well with the other activities in the construction side. Also important was that it didn't get wet, so we had to protect it from rain. That's something people forget all the time, is that you really have to make sure that it doesn't rain when you're placing them. And in Holland, a lot of construction companies don't do that, and that's why you see this kind of salty stuff coming out.
I also read that these bricks were good for the climbing plants. Is that true?
Also because they are that hard that they cannot be eaten by the roots. All the other houses next door are all made of different materials. They are very expressive, but also very shouting, like "Hello, I'm here." And the only way to compete with those neighboring houses was to make something really simple and introverted and black I thought was the most neutral and introverted choice of color.
Mm-hmm.
The material layer of the building is a very important layer, and that it has to be very precisely designed. We like to detail the projects very, very much, and we call this high definition architecture, as if you can, you know, zoom in really close to the building and still like it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of buildings, they are only nice when you look at them from 50 meters, and then when you come closer, you think, like, oh, what a shame. You don't want to see all those revelations of how it is made. But we like the project to be that you want to touch it and understand how it is made and still enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to come very close to the material in the experience. And that's something we do, and we call that high definition architecture, or architecture as a craft.